Hey guys, I'm kind of going down memory lane this morning, and I wanted to go ahead and do the top 10 albums of my life. And before you jump off the gun and say your favorite album isn't on here, this is not a top 10 of all time. This is not my opinion of the top 10 of all time. This is a list of albums that influenced my life to create the person you see before me today. I feel like in my circle of running, I have one of the most diverse music backgrounds there is. I mean, most of the stuff I grew up with, I started out listening to the country music when I was young, mainly because it's what my mother enjoys. My mother enjoys country music, so I listened to that my entire youth. And generally, what you're kind of put around is kind of what you enjoy. And as I gotten older, I slowly progressed more and more into rock, and then into metal, and then into softer stuff. But the album I've composed before me is only albums that made a imprint in my life, and my life would be different if if they weren't there to begin with. There are some runners up, so I'm gonna go ahead and get the runners up out of the way. The two albums that could have made the list, but they didn't make the list for certain reasons, is the first one is Tool's Undertow. Came out in 1993. It was probably Tool's masterpiece album. It didn't make it mainly because I was so much more of a fan of the other albums, and it never really got me through a period of my life, and it never influenced me emotionally. Even though it has a lot of good songs, and I remember playing it a lot, even though I bought it way later than when it came out. I mean, I think I got Undertow in 2006 was the first time I actually heard the album. And another one, which was actually going to be number 5 on my list, but I remembered an album that was more prevalent to what I was doing, was The Rise of Brutality by Hatebreed. And the reason this was going to be number 5, is even possibly higher, was it changed a period over in my life. But I decided to go against it because there's an album that's more influential in my life than The Rise of Brutality, even though it was one of my favorite albums and it played a huge role in my life, mainly coming out of depression in my high school years. The Rise of Brutality gave me insight, it gave me strength, it gave me confidence in myself, and to this day, it's still an album I put out or put on often. Has very emotional stuff. It was the kind of music I listened to at the time, and yeah, powerful album. If you don't own the album, you should buy it on iTunes. If at the very least, find the songs on YouTube and listen to them. They changed my life. They can probably change yours too. So let's go and get into this. Number 10, the 10th most influential album on my life is going to be Korn's "Follow the Leader." And you might say to me, Jordy, Korn, Follow the Leader? Korn's lame. Well, back in the late 90s, Korn was not lame at all. Korn was very exciting and very new and fresh. Keep in mind, this is coming from a guy that listened to mainly Garth Brooks and George Strait most of his life. And I went to a period I think Follow the Leader came out when I was in middle school, because I remember I used to go, the first song I heard from Follow the Leader was Got the Life. And it was on MTV back when they actually still played music instead of, and Got the Life, and it kept going up the countdown, up the countdown, up the countdown. I never heard of Korn before at this point, and I loved it, and like it got me hooked to Total Request Live, which eventually led me to like buying like Limp Bizkit's $3 bills, y'all, because it debuted with Counterfeit at like number 7, and then Faith got on there, and then later on Significant Other, Nookie blew up, and Limp Bizkit blew up with them. But Korn was already blowing up, and it kind of got me into that stage. I think they want to call it like rap metal. Korn doesn't really rap, but they kind of fell into that genre because they had like Ice Cube on their album and stuff like that. And I really liked the content with it. So I got Follow the Leader for Christmas. I got Follow the Leader and $3 bills, y'all, at the same time for Christmas. And it influenced me because it kind of paved the way for the changeover. Everybody kind of, when you're doing stuff like when you're changing over to music, you don't do drastic changes. And I slowly molded into it and molded it into the rock stage. And that's why Follow the Leader comes on here. It helped me mold over from country music into the more something closer to rock and roll. I don't want to piss anybody off and call it rock and roll, but it had a change over to that modern day, rock band. Number 9. Oh, number 9. When I wrote this one down, I even felt bad for writing this one down, but it's the truth. Disturbed's Down with the Sickness. As you'll notice, Disturbed's a little bit harder than Korn is. Some people would debate that, but Disturbed's Down with the Sickness was an album that I took because at the time I was very into wrestling, and I heard Stone Cold Steve Austin say that his favorite album out was Down with the Sickness by Disturbed. And the only song I'd heard at the time, the only song that was getting radio play was Stupefied. And I didn't like Stupefied when I first heard it. I'm like, oh, this band sucks. But when Stone Cold Steve Austin said he liked it, I went back and listened to it again, and all of a sudden I liked it. And I remember saving up my money, and I went and bought Disturbed at a place called Mood Swings. And Mood Swings was a little CD shop. They went out of business now, but I bought a lot of my albums there. And the reason I put Disturbed on the countdown is mainly because it reminds me of times when I used to hang out with Zachariah and my brother and Josh, and we would sit up all night on summers and play video games. We would listen to mainly like Korn, Disturbed, Limp Bizkit, and I had an old RCA boom box, and we would sit there play it and play it and play it, and like we just wore these things out, and we knew every single word to the Down with the Sickness album. We the Sickness, which was a song that became popular during that album. We knew that for it, and we felt trendy because it made us feel like we were like above the curve. Like, yeah, we knew about this song before it was popular, and like I think that all goes back to Stone Cold Steve Austin. But the reason this is number 9 is because it reminds me of my childhood and playing Final Fantasy Tactics and Tomb Raider 2, hanging out with my buddies and my brother, and yeah. Disturbed's Down with the Sickness is number 9. Excellent album. Probably the best album they've ever made, but Disturbed made a lot of good music. Number 8. Before you judge me on number 8, I want to go ahead and say this, that it comes from a period where we didn't realize music was uncool. And my number 8 pick is going to be the Backstreet Boys, Backstreet's Back. Their 1997 debut album. I remember me and my brother went in together and begged our mother to get us this album because we didn't realize at the time that listening to a boy band and being a boy was uncool. Keep in mind, 97, I was like 11 years old. My brother was 9. And we really, really, really wanted this album. And we played it and listened to it in the car. We would always ask our mother to play it in the car at the time because I think she had just got a 98 Pontiac Grand Prix SE, and it had a CD player in it. So 98, a CD player in a car. I don't know if it was rare, but it was the first car we had a CD player in, and we used to pull the album out of our CD to go to town and stuff like that and listen to it in the car. And it kind of, again, nostalgia. It's not that I couldn't probably listen to the album now, but as a kid, it was some of the best feelings in the world. We would pick which album we wanted to play and put it on the CD player. I mean, nostalgia is not worth a damn lick, but it means a lot to me. And yeah, number 8 has got to be the Backstreet Boys, Backstreet's Back. No particular reason other than that. Number 7. And here we go into the darker terms of my life. I wouldn't really consider these next 2 to be darker than anything else, but it kind of it's kind of to the point where we'd listened to Korn and Limp Bizkit and Disturbed long enough that we wanted it. It was becoming trendy, and we hated being trendy. We were against being anything of a trend when I was a kid, and so we went looking for deeper music that nobody else heard of. For some reason, it was important to us in our hearts to have music that nobody else had heard of. And I was up all night, late night. I've always been a night owl. And this album came out in 98, late 98. But I didn't hear about it till 99. And this is after I realized that Backstreet Boys weren't cool. Because that stage only lasted like 6 months. And people in school made fun of me one day when I said that, oh, I like the Backstreet Boys. And all the other boys like, really? You like the Backstreet Boys? And then I kind of like hid my face and like, no, I don't like the Backstreet Boys. So I kind of like threw the Backstreet Boys under the bus. So I'm like, all right, well, what do we have next? And I didn't really get to this album till after Follow the Leader and Down with the Sickness, but it was shortly after it. Around the people that I talked to, we always called this album It Has Legs. And nobody out there's probably ever heard of it by that title other than me. But I remember Serge saying that was what he wanted to call the album, It Has Legs, and the studio didn't want it. But it became System of a Down's self-titled album, and you can find it pretty much anywhere now. And the reason I found this album, it was late 1999, almost 2000 before I heard it. The album came out 2 years earlier, and I heard the song Sugar, Sugar. It kind of blew my mind because it sounded a lot like Jonathan Davis from Korn, but it was a lot more power riffy. Like they seem to use power chords a lot more than Korn does. Korn, they would they would throw the power chords on songs like Blind or Blind's the only one I can think of right now. But Nowhere to Run, Nowhere to Hide, songs like that. But most of the songs I like from Korn was like All in the Family, and like most of the other stuff in Follow the Leader were almost like crying ballads like Justin and stuff like that. And I really like Korn's Clown. So I was kind of getting into that, but this right here was more hard. Like you heard Sugar, and then I bought the album, and then Spiders came out as soon as I bought the album, and Spiders kind of got the band some notoriety, and I'm like, fuck. Now these people know who this is, so I can't have music everybody else is listening to, but I really loved it. Like Pluck, Political Lying, Unholy, Cowardly Killers, Peephole, which was my favorite song on the track. I actually ended up using that on a World at War video called Atomic Bomb Incoming, which I think I have private now, so because of contract stipulations. But yeah, I really liked It Has Legs by System of a Down because it to me it was cool to like System of a Down before they got popular. I kind of failed out of System of a Down during Toxicity because of the same effect they got popular. Can you see a trend coming here? I certainly can. But let's go to the next album. The next album, number 6. This one's got to be cliche. Any kid that grew up in the 90s and early 2000s are going to know what I'm about to say here. And I'm going to say it without regret and without disregard. Number 6 is going to be Slipknot's Barcode. I don't even know if they call it Barcode, but that's what I always called it, and all my friends called it. Some people call it self-titled. I call it Barcode. It's Slipknot's first album. It had songs such as Wait and Bleed. What other thing? It had a lot of good songs on it. Another song that comes to mind is Only One, Only one of us walks away. Eyeless, Sick, my whole philosophy's sick. The whole philosophy's sick. Liberate, No Life, Deluded, Scissors, Spit It Out. I mean, this is an album. This Slipknot's first album was the first album I listened to without any kind of like TV influence or other influence outside of things. And I'm gonna tell you how I bought the album. I used to play Diablo 1 a lot. This was 2000s ish, and this album came out in May of 2000, somewhere in that ballpark. So it was 2000, 2001 ish. I was waiting on Diablo 2. I was still playing Diablo 1. And a guy in the chat room had a warrior, and his name was Wait and Bleed. And inside his profile, he had the lyrics of Wait and Bleed, I felt the hate rise up in me, kneel down and clear the stone of leaves. That kind of thing. And so I punched that into a unknown search engine at the time, and Google. And I found the song. I listened to it on it wasn't YouTube, but no, this was Napster. So I punched the lyrics into Google, found out what the name of the song was, and then I went to Napster and I started downloading it. And I downloaded Wait and Bleed, and I liked it, so I went out and bought the album. Ooh, I stole music, yay! But I ended up buying it anyway, and I played the dog shit out of this. I played it so much, and this is right around the time I started going into high school, because I remember Kelly borrowing this album and breaking it. And like he ended up having to replace the album for me at like 4 or 5 years after I had bought it. And I still have Slipknot's Barcode. And I was really happy with it, and it's still one of my favorite albums to the day. And that right there alone makes it number 6 of the influence on my life.